double figures. I encourage you to look at that because it talks about the state of New Hampshire in general and the reason that we're losing population. And it was done 4 or 5 years ago now, and it's coming to fruition. It's a 55-minute video that you can get by going to the school website, sau4.org, and watch it whenever you want without commercials. You will find that in that video it talks about parents with school-age children leaving this geography for the South and Midwest to give themselves a raise by lowering their cost of living only. And they're the ones with school-age children. And that's what's happening. So now, when we have facilities that number 6 compared to our cohort districts, the one who has the largest number is only 5. You have to look at why we are spending so much more competitively than the other districts that we compare ourselves to, meaning they're essentially the same size, personnel-wise, character-wise, attribute-wise. Then you have to look at the districts around us that our professional staff may migrate to if they like a better paying position. They're not cohorts. Plymouth is not a cohort, but they're close by. Guilford is not a cohort, but they're close by. And all that data is out there, and it kind of screams at us that we are investing in infrastructure and continuing to keep that infrastructure in place as the number of students continue to diminish. And that trend has not reversed. And with all due respect, Dr. Gelderman, I haven't been able to verify that there's been a turnaround in the trend. And I go by the Department of Education. Let's assume that that trend doesn't occur and continues in the manner it has. Then we're essentially going to continue to support infrastructure as a priority rather than have the money available to pay our professional staff and our support staff in a fair manner and to try to keep them here. That's the challenge that we on the school board are facing, and it's hard for me anyway to articulate this to you, to give you enough data so that you will at least come to an objective conclusion that yes, something has to be done. Some of you did articulate that it's time to get through the pain. We've got to pick this up and figure out what's the best solution. Now, the ancillary aspects of this, vis-a-vis the building situation in Bristol, mean that Bristol, whose tax situation is the largest in the 7-town cooperative district, that's another thing, someone had mentioned there's 8 of us, there are not, there's only 7 of us. They have the biggest tax burden, and one of the buildings would be attractive to the town of Bristol if a decision were made for the purpose of consolidating and getting into an environment where we have fewer buildings to maintain, but more money available as a result of that to pay fairly and do innovative programming that I mentioned to you earlier that I've been frustrated with. The immersion stuff that seems to improve student outcomes. We just haven't been able to get to that. You know, I want to share with you, just as a reminder, some of the issues that we had to deal with. We had a 10% budget cut. Then we had a tax cap. Then we lost a superintendent. Then we had a legislative issue with an error on the tax cap. Then we had Danbury withdrawal issues. Then we had a Danbury K-6 tuition petition. We had a Project Promise fiasco that took $250,000 out of our budget that we had to pay back to the state. The teacher's contract was defeated. Then Bridgewater Hebron wants to do a study, a K-8 study for just Bridgewater Hebron. Then that turned into a Bridgewater Hebron withdrawal. With the declining population statewide, these things continue to give us problems in dealing with what we have to deal with as a board, and we need to share that information with you so that you'll understand in more depth.
Can I see Fred? I just want to say where I got the $10 million, because I was looking at projects like ours, and the Epping Middle School added a stage, a gym, 200-car parking lot, 11 classrooms, office space, music room, and art room for $10.5 million, and that's actually a really good price. So I didn't just come up with the number. I was looking at what we could potentially need here. Another alternative what I'd like to do is commission an architectural study and have someone come in and look at all of our buildings and what we need, and then also what our possibilities are. And another possibility I think that we should consider is renovating the middle school so that we have the special ed preschool there, so that we have the SAU offices there, so that we have at least the junior high there, and continue to use it as a school. That's it.
I'd like to point out one more thing. While we're pointing out issues, I'd also like to point out that the declining student enrollment has another effect on us, and that is that student numbers are used to compute our adequacy aid. Not only will the amount of adequacy aid go down based on available funds, but we'll lose our percentage of that as we lose students. That means that your tax rate goes up.
That's another good point, Jeff, in terms of sharing detailed data that is very difficult for us to convey. But it has an impact on you all.
Okay. I'm just going to wrap this part up. Okay.
Wait, I just wanted to.
Okay.
One more. We know that the middle school needs a lot of work. We need to be able to pass warrant articles in order to get the money to do this work, and also to pass warrant articles to pay our teachers decent wages. If you can't pass any warrant articles, you're never going to go anywhere. And it does cost a lot of money to run this district, and people are hurting. So I don't know what the answer is, but I know what the questions are.
Another thing, just to remind people, we voted in 2012, and there were 2 warrant articles. One was to go K-6 and do a junior high wing, and that passed in Danbury and Hebron only. It failed in New Hampton by 2. We also took a vote on K-8, 5 independent districts, tied in Groton, passed in Bridgewater, passed in Hebron, lost by 1 in Bristol. So we do have some gauge of what the tax base at that time anyway, and taxpayers and the voters had interest in, and it didn't seem that they really had interest in change. I would like to let Archie finish his statement, because he was partway through that. Archie.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
And I'll try to have a couple more statements on the side other than the notes. Now, I've continued an active role in the district since my retirement. As a matter of fact, I served as chair of the Budget Committee for 3 years, and during that time period, that particular Budget Committee did a good deal of initiating ways to save money in this particular school district. I do not believe and support the closure of the middle school, because I strongly believe that we will again grow, and we will have an upswing in terms of the population in the area. It may take 10 years, but things cycle, and that will happen, and we do need space for students. To me, accepting other students from districts with resulting tuition payments certainly would go a long way in smoothing out costs. As a person who's been there and done that with respect to the educational structure, we have, I think, the best structure we can have for this district. Now, one of the things that we need to consider, and I haven't heard mentioned, is that if you look at the tax base of the 7 communities involved in the school district, you will notice that the tax base has decreased dramatically. For example, Bristol went from 540 million to well under 500 million. And that was the cause of that was the decline in property values. And I'm sure that affected all of the other communities. With that in mind, I want you to look at the net amount the school district raises. Not the total budget, but the net amount the district raises, and you'll see that it stayed remarkably stable over the last 4 or 5 years. About just a little under $12 million is what the tax base, what the 7 towns provide to operate the school district. With a budget of $20+ million, the other monies come from the state and other sources, federal government. So you have to keep that in mind, and I would say that the board has done a remarkable job in keeping that level, and my compliments to you. But I want you to think what's best educationally for the kids and for the parents. Remember that there was a group that struggled with this very issue in '88, '89. And they came up with this particular solution, and I think it's still extremely valid. I'd like to know at some point, what's so terribly wrong with the middle school with its physical plan. I was just in it the other day, and I don't think you're going to lose the student because it's dangerous to be there. But when you come up with something that is actually true about what needs to be done and can put some numbers with it, then maybe we can make a reasonable kind of decision about what to do. I haven't heard any solid plan of what needs to take place and how much it's going to cost. And until you get that, I'm not ready to support anything except keeping the educational structure we currently have. Thank you.
I'd like a poll of the board as to what they think the educational quality is of the middle school. Because everything you're talking about is simply facilities and money, but you're not talking about what are you going to do to change the educational output from 26% to get at least about 50% in the state in terms of whether their cohort schools. We're not doing well with what we're doing now. Don't blame it on the building. Don't blame it on the teachers. What are you going to do? You're elected to turn around and make a decision. You have all the data. That's what you're supposed to be leaders for. I'm sick and tired of hearing about the fact is the building's cracked, this is wrong, that's wrong. Everybody says you can teach in a closet. For God's sake, turn around and make a decision to do something. Nothing has happened in years. And the school education output is poor. We're glossing it over.
I think this year we have seen some major changes in the educational sort of vision of this school. Sitting in front of me is a curriculum coordinator. That's a huge improvement to the district. I know that the middle school and the high school have worked diligently to improve a schedule, have intervention times. So I would love to see this next coming year in regards to what improvements we have made and how they are going to affect the education, because I'm very excited about where this school is headed right now, and I think they have a focus, and I think people are on board. So I commend the people for these changes and what has been going on in the middle school and the high school. So that's my opinion.
I was going to say kind of ditto, but, yeah, my comment was kind of ditto. Stacy has only been here a year, and her first year she had to tackle restructuring the special education program, and this year, the focus is on restructuring the middle school schedule so that there are times for intervention and enrichment, and I just don't think that she's been given time to show that this can work. Can't tell you the results until we've implemented the changes.
I'm not trying to say that the current administration isn't fantastic, they are. The problem is we've had promises for 20 years, and this middle school has had that problem that length of time. It's not gone away, and I think there's a great possibility, but a lot of the taxpayers and a lot of the people that want to support Newfound School District are frustrated with the fact that, this is just another, I'm hoping that it actually succeed, but the fact is you can't even make a change in one grade in one school.
I'd just like to point out that this board got a letter from the Teachers Association for its meeting this evening that expressed some very serious concern about the morale of the professional staff in writing, and we were told that it's at an all-time low. And the president of the association has been here for 26 years, and she's never seen it this low. So now I ask you, with that in mind, you're the school board, how do you deal with that? And I will unfortunately have to relate to you that it is primarily financially based.
I disagree.
Well,
I think it's uncertainty. People are afraid to take risk when they don't have security to take risk, and until they're free to take a risk with a vision to follow, we're not going to make things better.
well, I would submit that a sizable amount of funds are going to be required to be approved by the voters to get the teacher's contract passed.
Before you do anything, how are you going to get around the tax cap?
The tax cap is the most misunderstood tool that has been implemented in this district. First of all, for those of you that are interested in repealing it, it only takes 25 signatures, 25 voters, to get it onto the ballot for purposes of rescinding it. You do have to have more than 2/3 of the voters that vote on election day vote in favor of rescinding it. So there's that option if you want to deal with that. But the tax cap in an environment where we're growing is a tool to help prevent the budget from growing out of control. But when we are shrinking, it has very little impact on us. So you got to educate. This is another good example about the data that you need to educate yourself on. Understand how the tax cap either helps or hinders you. But it's through no fault of the tax cap that where we are now.
This lady.
It doesn't hurt because the budgets have become smaller.
This lady behind us is going to speak.
So Kathleen Connor, Hebron. I've heard a couple things tonight that I'm just very uncomfortable with. A couple of asking participation from the audience to make a vote, where for myself, and I think I've heard a scattering of other people may feel the same way, I don't really know what I'm voting on when I'm asked that question. So I think in terms of that, I've also just heard a statement, a huge assumption, and this is part of my discomfort, a huge assumption that morale is related solely to money, and that I can speak for myself is not the case. And I can't even say that my morale is low per se, but I can just, for my own perception, that's where I'm at. It's not just about money. So I'd venture to say that there's a lot of assumptions going on. Even though you have data, there are assumptions being made that we have to find another way to access that information. You're only getting a piece of information tonight from this crowd of people. There is a huge number of people in this district who care tremendously about what happens to the education of the district and to their own personal children and the children. I hear from children. I hear from my own children. They're not here tonight. I wouldn't drag them here tonight. Can you imagine asking them to sit through all this? So they're not here. There are a lot of people with thoughts and ideas. And honestly, I really don't know how to access all that information, but I would not want to venture to make so many assumptions. And if you want my vote on K6, 7 through 8, 7 through 12, whatever, I need a vision. Give me something to buy into, and I might go, wow, yeah. But what about this, what about that? There's no vision attached to it. There's no model that says, this is going to work. You know, that's all I have to say.
Hi, Justine, Tina, Kimball, Bristol, taxpayer, parent, staff member. I just want to say that, first of all, we've gotten off topic. Second, it's my understanding that the whole point of the middle school closing was to save money, when everything that needs to get those 6th graders back to elementary school and the 7th grade of the high school is going to quadruple, in my assumption, to make it happen. And again, they want to give the teachers pay and whatnot. I think that we should look at some alternatives, not the buildings at this moment. The economy stinks. I'm working 3 extra jobs. We're all having a hard time. The reason the teachers' contracts didn't go by is because people are all struggling. Until the whole economy in this country changes, I don't foresee a big change, right away. Let's get Hill. Let's get them in. Let's see what we can do.
I'm looking for ideas from the board now. How would you like to proceed with this? It sounds like, at this point, most of the opinions are in front of us, and repeat opinions of the same. So, are there any motions to be made? We tend to leave people hanging, wondering what's going to happen next. I would like to suggest that we commission an architectural study on our buildings.
I think the discussion is not yet done. I think people have not been exposed to enough information yet to at least fundamentally understand the problem. And commissioning another study at this point is, I don't think, the right choice. So I would be opposed to doing that and spending the money on it, because we're just not ready to do that. We need to share this data that we all have knowledge of on the board and have concerns about, which is why it was brought up, and we wanted to bring it to the public to open up discussion. I think we need to continue this forum and to ask those of you in the community that may have a presentation that you'd like to make to the group to be given the opportunity to do so, and those of us on the board that may feel as though we should share some additional data, that we should be given the opportunity to do so, and kick this around a bit, because while the board is vested with the legal authority to determine the configuration, it's certainly something that we want to do with the public's support. And the only way we're going to get that support is to have the public's understanding of what we're facing. And so I think it's very premature at this point to decide to take any action until we can continue this discussion and let it simmer a little bit with people. We've got a great turnout this evening. It's not always this voluminous. I think we should take advantage of it.
Great. So is your suggestion to continue this discussion on September 22nd? For a planning and dialogue meeting?
Yeah.
I think that's what's needed.
I think we need to do it, and I need to ask everyone in here to bring another friend that either shares your opinion or an opposite opinion, so that we can have a healthy, ongoing discussion.
What kind of information are we going to be given before then so that our dialogue goes further than what just happened today? I need information and this data not to be spewed out at the meeting, but so that we can actually look into and have been informed on what we need to know.
That's a good question, and I think it's fair. What I'm trying to suggest is that those of us that may have knowledge of where that data is and what we might want to present from it selectively, not for purposes of persuasion, but to inform, it's all out on the district website. You got to do your homework. I sent out a copy of the budget that we adopted, which was parsed. For anybody with modest Excel skills, you could do whatever analysis you want with it. That was posted on Facebook. There's the data task force information that's been out on the website for 4 or 5 years now. I recommend that you look at that. It's voluminous, very detailed, but it has some telling information in it. Do your own research. Contact the State Department of Education and find out about trends. And by all means, do please go to the website and view that Communities and Consequences video, which will baseline what the fundamental issue is here in New Hampshire.
Fred. Although it's fine for people to do their research, I don't think that's what she's asking for. I think she's asking for our research so that she can look at it before the next meeting. Then she can look into other things if she wishes to. But I think it's unfair to tell her to go to, half a dozen different places. So if we've got things that we're considering, we need to share that with the public prior to the next meeting so that they come in informed, not come in and get wowed by a presentation and have no time to process it.
Receive the same information. I don't want somebody who has the extra time on their hands to be able to look at 12 different sites, and then 2 other parents that are juggling way more, not to be able to have that same information.
Well, I'm going to apologize in advance, but this job takes time. This responsibility to do this right requires a lot of personal hours for every one of us. And I would submit to you that you ought to be in a position to evaluate the information that we have available and come up with your own conclusion. I think that it's the responsibility of those parents who don't want to see their children on the same bus with 16 or 18-year-old boys and don't want to see the kids that are exposed to drugs at the junior high be exposed to that at the high school. You all have the same responsibility to face the issues that we're trying to deal with at every meeting. And you can't cross a chasm in 2 separate jumps. You got to make the investment, and it's got to be a commitment. And it's not easy. And I volunteered at the very beginning of this to answer any questions any of you had. I would be happy to go one-on-one and tell you everything I know.
Wendy wants to speak. Wendy?
Sorry.
Wendy?
Wendy Cantwell, New Hampton. A couple of different points, and I apologize for coming in late. I was supporting my middle schooler at his soccer game. One, I would like to thank Archie for the first time in 9 years. He's supporting something that I think the majority of us I specifically heard him say that he would like to keep the middle school open, and I thank him for that. In addition to the 9 years that we have been in the district, I'm tired, with all due respect, I'm tired of fighting you guys and the budget committee. I've been up here every year since my little guy was in kindergarten, and now he's in 8th grade. He loves the middle school. 2 years ago, it was sending the 5th graders to the middle school. The building was fine when you wanted to send our 9-year-olds to the middle school. And now, 2 years later, you want to take our 6th graders out of those same buildings. I understand, my home included, things fall apart in 2 years. One of my questions is, where is the capital improvement plan for each building? From what I understand, there was a group committee put together either a year ago or so, subgroups, of where to spend those capital improvement monies. And I don't remember seeing a lot of it going to the middle school, but if I'm wrong, please excuse me. This past summer, we had middle school teachers and middle school students improving that building, painting the ramp, washing the windows, painting the hallways, different things like that. So I don't know where the capital improvement monies are going, but I think they have been neglected in that building. My other emotional statement is that 11, 12, and 13-year-olds need that transition. They, by the time they hit 5th grade, they are done being with the little kids, so they're ready to go to 6th grade and don't want to be in the same building, but they're not ready to be in the same building with the 18-year-old quarterback. So they need that emotional, social, and academic transition middle school phase. Thank you.
I would like to ask the board to do a white paper on the data they think is most important for the general public to see. If that were a 4-page report sort of thing, just bullets about the items that you think we ought to know, that would be very helpful. Oh, and publish it in the paper?
Not just one. Not just one paper.
Hi, I just have one quick closing thought about this. And in my opinion, Hill is really a drop in the bucket in a very much sinking ship. And I think if we're going to save ourselves, it's not going to be Hill saving us, it's going to be us saving ourselves. The other thing is, as a district, you said, what would you like to see from the board? What I see in other districts that I've been a part of that I do not see in this district, and I have never seen it, is a long-term plan. Most districts I've worked in have like 10-year plans, and in year 5 we're going to do this, and year 6 we're going to do this. And you don't always reach that exact plan because time changes things, but there is a long-range plan, and I've never seen that here, and that mystifies me. The other thing is strong leadership. We don't have it here. You have to have some really smart, not afraid to have people get a little bit mad at you person who's running the show, who listens to everyone, but then in the end, who comes to the decision. And it's not just a school board. These are not people who have degrees in education. It is the superintendent. You need a and I don't know Mrs. Buckley, so I'm not making any comments. You're new here, but we need that person who's going to get up there and make those hard decisions, and that's what I'd like to see.
Can I see? I just want to say, even though Hill brings in money, I want them to come in anyway, and the reason I want them to come in is because when your numbers are going down and you add 40 kids to the high school or you add 20 kids to the middle school, suddenly you have enough numbers to field a team or enough numbers to run a club or enough numbers to run an elective that you only had a few for. So I think it just enriches the whole program. And when it comes to long-range plans, Stacy and I have already talked about this. We have to start somewhere. We've started with the facilities committee. We've only had one meeting, but we've got to assess what we have. We have to get support from the public. They've done this before. They've done studies into long-range plans. They get shot down because there's a price tag attached to them. So I challenge you to help us get it passed once we get one, but it's going to take us a while to put it together.
A couple of things. I like the idea of the fact sheet, and I willing to work with anybody else to kind of put something together. Ruby's liking the idea. I think we could get that ready before the next meeting, and enough time for people to have a chance to look at it. Yeah. The other thing is, we were talking about facilities and long-range plans, and I was reading through the minutes of the facility committee meeting, and I was struck by something that was said. Our facilities director was asked how many maintenance people we have in the district. Not janitors, but building maintenance. And he answered that there were two. One does grounds and one does buildings. We have 7 buildings? 6 buildings. Well, the SAU office was 7. So, then we have another guy who mows the lawns and takes care of the grounds. These 2 guys have got to be...
He's one of them.
One groundskeeper,
Yeah.
that's it, one groundskeeper.
Skipper and one's maintenance guy.
30-40% time on the field.
Okay, so we're still talking about 2 guys
Yeah.
that have got to be the most overworked guys in the school district. Because that's a lot of real estate to cover. And somebody had complained to me a month or 2 ago about a door lock in the middle school that hadn't gotten fixed. And you know what? I didn't understand why that door lock hadn't gotten fixed until tonight. And the reason is because we got one guy. One guy in this whole school district. Talk about not having a commitment to your facility. You know? I own one house, and I can't keep up with the maintenance on it by myself. I can't imagine having a whole district full of school buildings and having to fix everything that gets broken every day.
Well, I just wanted to add to that, I think that Stacy made a comment once about how low our maintenance budget is, and that perhaps it's too low. Am I right about that? It's too low. We're not spending enough on maintenance, yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Stand up. Can I sit? I wasn't actually going to speak tonight because I really wanted to get the perspective from the audience, from the parents, as well as the board. I have been here just a little over a year. Through that year, I started at the end of the Danbury withdrawal study, the K-8 study. I did my own study the first 4 months I was here. That's what I spent time doing. We've had now the Bridgewater Hebron study. We've had all kinds of issues that we've uncovered that we've been working on fixing, Project Promise. For those who know me, I make those tough decisions. I have made those tough decisions that people weren't happy with, but decisions that were in the best interest of students, best interest of the district. I come from a district that was ranked #1 in the state for under $10,000 cost per pupil. It can be done, but we have to work together to do this. I encourage the board to work as a board, not as 7 individuals, to come together, to make a decision so that we can continue to focus on education. I can't go through another study. You know, I want to focus on education. We have made significant changes. We've done some great things. We've got something started at the middle school, at the high school to improve education. But every time we do one of these studies, every time we go off task, it takes away all the time and dedication that we need to improve education in this district. So again, I encourage the board, you've got feedback, this is what you wanted. You have an audience, you have a good number of people here who have just given you feedback. Take that feedback and make a decision on where we go and what we do. No matter what that decision is, we will work through it. If it is K-8, if it's K-6, we'll figure it out. But no, I just ask the board to make those decisions and let's keep moving on. Let's be positive. Let's make changes in this district for our students with the taxpayer in mind. It can be done, but we have to make those decisions and we have to move on so we can do that. Thank you.
Okay. So, yeah.
I just wanted to say one thing. I personally don't want to have another meeting with dialogue because it creates so much more uncertainty that again is why we can't pass the teacher contract. So the more we dialogue and the more we talk about it, ultimately it just prolongs the agony of it. I think we've pretty much said our configuration seems to be working. I agree with Mr. Ogier.
Point of order, would the chair recognize the gentleman at the mic?
Yes?
Hi, Kevin Glidden, Bristol, taxpayer, parent. I'd like to thank you all for your time and your diligence. I contemplated coming up here at all, but I've heard a couple of things. And one is I did print out the budget, so thank you for putting that up there. I took a look at it today. The object code for maintenance of the buildings is $430, if anybody's interested. The high school budget maintenance is $4,700. The middle school is only $1,110. I think what we're seeing with the infrastructure here, and we talk about broken schools, broken this, broken that, is that we don't have enough funds. It all comes down to money. I think we have a school board and a school budget committee who, frankly, are afraid of taxpayers. I think we've done a poor job over the last 30 years educating voters at the polls on tax day to support the school budgets that we all know we need. It's been said from many people on the school board themselves that 80 to 85% of the school budget is people and the benefits associated with those people as teachers. So on the flip side of that, 15 to 20% is everything else, the buildings, the buses, whatever. So if we cut 15% from the budget by closing every single school in the district and teach the kids in a field, you still haven't solved the problem of the money. Fixing a school is less than 10% of the budget. We just don't have enough money. And I challenge the school board and the school budget committee both to put out the data that people are asking for and bring a plan so that voters, instead of just seeing a number, oh, the school district wants $30 million, no way. Make these people understand the impacts of the decisions to support the budget. If we close the middle school, what becomes of that? It's the next MICA building. And it's going to cost $15 million to tear it down. Or it's more low-income housing with more students. It's a never-ending problem. It's a budget problem. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Sorry, I thought Jeff wanted to speak.
No, I was just appreciating his comments.
Okay, all right. Well, I asked that we look at these two things as two separate things, and yeah, okay, just a minute, and I will hear you. I wanted to discuss K through 6 separate from any kind of closure, any kind of movement. And so I'm going to let, I have the first name, forgot the last name. I'm going to let her speak and then come back to this. Yep.
Hi, Elizabeth Vogler from Bristol. My kids went through the system. I'm a taxpayer, and I'm the longest teacher in the district at this time, 30 years. So I'm devoted to this one. Let me remind you, let's not reinvent the wheel. You did a whole study on the middle school, the best configuration for our students, the best way for our students to learn. And as I recall, as a vote from the board, after a long, long year, it came out the middle school model was the best one for our kids. Thank you.
Thanks. Is there any board member willing to make a motion?
It's not a motion. I came here tonight to get the input from the community and to try to look at all the different facets of this. I was not prepared to make a decision tonight, and I'm still not prepared. And I think we do need to get this information out to the public, and I do think we need a planning and dialogue meeting. I do think we need to make a decision very shortly after that, and no more studies, but I would like to have that meeting with everybody being informed and able to comment again. It seems like a lot, but this is a huge thing. So it needs a lot of input and discussion and thought.
I want to just say something so people understand. We can't leave here and talk about this. So your comments are good because we have to have time to process all that we've heard too. I know it's miserable. I know it makes for more uncertainty, but we can't have conversations on the side about this. We can only have these conversations here in front of you. So we can't like call each other up on the phone and say, what do you think about what this person said? We have to do it here. And it doesn't sound like we're ready to have that conversation until we think about what we've heard. So I'm good with having a planning and dialogue meeting on September 22nd to continue this. We will get a fact sheet out to you because Jeff and I will put it together and collect whatever information the rest of the board wants to provide for it. So if there's no objection, that will be what we do next. So I need to hear from the board on this. Okay. Okay. We'll try to get it in the newspaper. I don't know, Archie, if we can get it together in time. He's gone, isn't he? He took off. Oh, he's right there. Okay, yes. We'll try to get it in the newspaper. I just don't know if we can get it together in time, but we'll certainly get it published and out to as many people as we can. Yeah. Not everybody's got the internet. That's an assumption.
The library for free.
Carol Huber from Bristol. I certainly don't know what the answer is here, but we've got a problem, and the board knows it, and they've tried to put something out here tonight about closing a building. Taxpayers can't afford their taxes. We've got a lot of elderly in town. I'm retired. I'm working full-time because I cannot afford not to. And I think a good many people in this building have come from a 6 and 6 education. I myself did. My daughter did through this newfound school system, 6 and 6, and she's done very well for herself. And I'm not opposed to that. And if some people in here think that there's no drugs in that middle school, they should think twice, because I know for a fact that there are. So people that don't want their children up at the high school because they're afraid of drugs or anything else, we got communities around us. Interlakes has a 6 and 6 school system. They seem to be doing all right. Have we talked to other school districts and got their input about how they've done it, how they feel it's working? Would they change it? That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so I had a lot of nods and yeses over here, so if you're all in agreement with meeting again on September 22nd, getting a fact sheet out before that, having this be the only topic for that meeting, then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, Jeff moved to adjourn at 9:18 p.m. Is there a second? And a second by Christine? Oh, I'm sorry, not Jeff, Ben. Okay, second Christine. Okay. I don't have to do all in favor, right, for adjournment? All those in favor say aye. Okay, we'll see you guys on September 22nd.